Okay, so we're now live. Excellent.
Fantastic.
So hello everyone and welcome to the AI series. It's great of you to join us today. My name's Laura, I'm the Marketing Executive for Oxygen Digital Recruitment. We specialise in building AI and data science teams globally. And if you want a little bit more info about that, myself and Andreas as well, I'll pop some info in the chat for you. Just a brief overview of Livestorm for those of you who haven't used it before. We do have some options on the right-hand side for you to engage with us. So we do have a chat option that's available for you to contact myself, Andreas, and obviously any other attendee as well. We have the questions tab there as well. Please, if you think of any questions throughout the time that we're spending together, then please pop them in there and we'll get to that in the Q&A section at the end of the event. And we also have a poll function as well. So if you do see any polls in there, please vote because we may well come back to them in the event too. If you do have any issues throughout the event, please just pop a message in the chat. I'll be monitoring that so I can get back to you. And you will receive a live recording of the event straight after. And I'll also be popping this on YouTube with closed captions within the next few days as well for you to access at any time. So that's enough from me. I'll now pass you over to Andreas and we can go ahead and get started. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And what I will do is I will start with sharing my screen. Here we go. So hopefully everybody can see my screen right now. Could you please confirm you do? Laura?
Yep,
okay.
Yep, I can see that. Perfect, thank you.
Fantastic. All right, thank you. So hi everybody and welcome. My name is Andreas Õismaa and I have been around data for the past 20 years of my life, starting as an ETL engineer, dragging myself through the advanced analytics hype and master data management and data governance topics to finally end up founding DataSingularity today. And in these 20 years, what I have seen in data is a lot of perceived success, but a lot of explicit failure and also a lot of implicit failure, where success is celebrated, but 2 years in, we are worse than we have been before we started. So today in this session, I want to talk about why is data so difficult? So technology has moved really light years since in the past 20 years. Today, more than ever, business is aware of the importance of data. Data is an asset is a kind of a cliche phrase that everybody is saying now. And yet, if you look at the digital innovation, digital transformation, and for a lot of companies, the topic is just automation, you will see that about 70% of those initiatives actually fail. And if you look into the failure stories, you will see multiple factors, of course, but one common factor that you will see in most of those stories is data. So first off, how do you experience those failures? Let's say you start a digital transformation program and you have a fantastic team, you have a fantastic digital product to deliver, the business is committed, you have all the wealth of technology, and half a year later, you find yourself in a situation where business is kind of not that interested anymore. The delivery is lagging behind and we are no longer on time, on budget, and even whatever gets released isn't really used by the user community. So the user adoption is also lacking. Typically, a consultancy company would blame business, would blame wrong technology choices, or would blame change management. But since I've been looking at it for the past 20 years, I can tell you the business is there. They are very well aware of what needs to be done. The technology is more than ever there today. So what is actually going wrong here? And what does the data have to do with this very sad story? Before we go into it, let's go back and talk about why do we even have data? So let's transport ourselves into the prohibition times, where in order to do your job, you would be yourself and a colleague on the phone, and you would exchange information, and everybody would be responsible for their little piece of work. So let's make an example. You have Joe and you have Frankie, and Joe sells and Frankie has to deliver. So, and let's say they sell olive oil. Why not? I really like the Godfather references. So imagine Joe just had a contract with somebody to buy 100 barrels of olive oil. So he picks up the phone and he calls Frankie and he says, Frankie, I've just sold 100 barrels of Genko to Olivet. Fantastic. The question then is, Frankie, who does logistics, what is he going to tell his Aunt Mary when he's back home? Very likely, he's going to go back home and say, well, you know, Aunt Mary, today Joe sold 100 barrels of Sicilian Virgin to Corleone Company, which sounds nothing like the initial message that he got from Joe. But that is because in his logistical view, he has a way to refer to things which is not necessarily the same as the salespeople use. Well, obviously, Joes and Frankies don't scale all too well. They're both people. So in order to scale them, today we have computer systems that can exchange millions of this kind of messages and automate the process to the point that now you have hundreds of Joes selling olive oils and hundreds of Frankies delivering them, all embedded in one ERP system. However, the problem remains the same. In order for those people to, or in order for those systems now, for those processes to be able to work together, the data they exchange needs to be interoperable. Now, 100 barrels is very clear. There is no question of what 100 barrels is. So we are coming down to the topic of interoperability of the core data, the data about things that exist in real world, our products, our clients or our vendors, our assets. That core data, which you might also hear referred to as master and reference data, is really that glue that keeps our process value chains together. And in order for our enterprise to work end to end, it has to be interoperable. Meaning that a message that one part of the process is sending and the meaning embedded in that message has to be properly received and interpreted by the next process in the value chain. So we just brought it down to the core data, aka master reference data. So what are the challenges of core data? There are 4 of them that I see all the time in large non-digital native enterprises. And 3 of the 4 are actually inherent qualities, and only one of those 4 is actually a symptom on poor data management by the company that holds that data. And I will leave it with you to think about which one that is. So let me quickly go through them. The data silos is a very self-explanatory thing. I will talk a lot about it in the next few minutes. Hidden knowledge, so the knowledge that's not in the systems, but actually is in the systems. So in a way, it's embedded and hidden in such a way that if you are an expert, you understand what's being said in that system. If you are not, you won't. You have non-digital data, so the data that's not really in the systems. Where is it? Well, typically in the heads of people. Can be on post-its that people stick behind their desks. Can be in some kind of CSV or Excel file that people exchange that IT has no idea of. And finally, we have the fact that there is a lot of data, too much data, many attributes of the same piece of data, and we hardly even know anymore what does it mean, how is it used, and what are we doing with it? All right, so let's tackle them one by one. The data silos. Let's talk about how data silos appear. So the official definition of data silos is having 2 places in the organization or more that hold data, and that data is really not interoperable, so not understood and not exchangeable easily with the other parts of the organization. And typically what you will hear is data silos are evil. We will break your data silos. That's the promise a lot of consultancy companies make. So let's talk about them. Data silos appear within the processes. If you look at a very complex and large business, you will notice that depending on what needs to be done, people see the world in a certain way. As a legal person, you will see a client in a certain way, which will be very different from if you are a logistical person. If you manufacture the product, you are really concerned with the details of the mixture that you put into that product and the manufacturing process. As a logistical person, you will care more about, is that product dangerous? Does it require special ways of transporting? As salesperson, you will care more about what makes this product different from everything else. So if you go and you ask manufacturing, logistics, and sales, how many products do we have as a company? You will guaranteed hear 3 different answers. That is, unless you will hear something like, well, I don't know what a product is. We manufacture materials, we sell grades, we deliver items or SKUs. So you will also very quickly see that not even the terminology is aligned to the point of enabling human-to-human communication. So Joe and Frankie on the phone would not understand each other in a complex organization. Data silos are a little bit like the perspectives that are born because different processes look at the world from different corners. So let's take a cup. It's a multidimensional real world thing. It's a cup of coffee. So I'm sorry, here I'm showing you beer. Now I'm showing you coffee. And it's not even Friday yet. But if I look at that cup of coffee from above, all I see is a circle. So to me, from my viewpoint, this cup is a circle. If you look at it from the side, you see a rectangle. So am I right or are you right? Actually, we're both right from our own viewpoint. And yes, we just created a data silo and we even created diverging terminology, and yet we are both right. The way big companies tackle it, breaking the data silos, is by creating a standardized perspective. So what is the standardized perspective between a rectangle and a circle? It's an oval. Well, do I need an oval? No. From my view, it's a circle. So now if I have to govern an oval, it's just an overhead that I wasn't hoping for when doing my job. Same goes for you. You need your rectangle. So oval is something that you might pay attention to for the greater good of advanced analytics or AI project, but ultimately it's kind of useless for you to do your job. So the truth is data silos are not evil, and breaking them is kind of counterintuitive to the actual natural real world qualities of our data. What would be great is breaking out of them. So making them interoperable and saying, the cup is a circle from above, the cup is a rectangle from the side. And this is how those two viewpoints connect to each other. And by the way, in this specific scenario, they refer to the same exact cup in the real world. So I honestly love data silos because all they do is they show that your organization is big, complex, and multifaceted. Another thing we need to talk about is the non-digital data and the data that carries hidden meaning in it. Typically, when you think about a big company, a big international bank or oil and gas company, you will think their ERP systems, their logistical systems, their sales systems, they're like skyscrapers, modern, beautiful, fit for purpose, and very harmoniously fitting into the landscape. Effectively, when you look under the hood, what you will discover is that they have been built probably 20, 30 years ago. Some of those systems are actually mainframe. And in a way, they have been developing in a bit of evolutionary manner with extensions and hacks and patches and fixes to the extensions. And really, if I need to draw an analogy, they would more look like a Brazilian favela that grows kind of naturally without any plan or without any vision to it. What that means is business is changing. It's changing very quickly. The systems, especially mainframe or ERP systems, they are not that quick to change. And the worst thing is, if we really undertake the change, it will take so long that by the moment we are done, we are too late and we need to initiate another change because business has moved on. And today it moves on quicker than ever. So what do users do? They still need to use ERP to run their processes, or they still need to use those mainframe systems. So what do? Well, they start embedding hidden meaning. For example, if I deliver my goods to a company on behalf of another company who actually pays me, the company I'm delivering to, maybe I will set it up in my ERP with a little star behind the name. So me and my colleagues will know that this is not the actual client, this is just recipient of goods. So more and more of those scenarios will be tackled by adding little stars, a dot here, two dots there, a slash, a hash. So effectively, when you go through that with your data quality tooling that is tuned to detect the pattern and fix the mismatches to the pattern, you will see a lot of data quality problems. And the worst you can do there is fixing it. Because once you fixed it, the hidden knowledge is gone. And of course, eventually we push those systems so far that you're out of tricks. So what people start doing, they start saying, okay, well, I have nowhere to put my logistical constraints. Fine, I'll just write them on the post-it. I'll stick the post-it behind my desk. And if I forget, I can look it up on the post-it. So what that means is, shall that person, that expert that knows how to find the post-its and knows how to interpret all those stars and slashes and hashes, should that person leave, the business will be impacted more than HR department can think. And effectively, there is a very big expert dependency anywhere in the world where you see organically growing and expanding legacy landscape that is somewhat outdated compared to the business requirements of today. So, there is a lot of talk about turning data into knowledge. The whole advanced analytics hype was about that. Now a little bit of AI hype is about that. But what I find necessary is do the other way around. Turn that hidden knowledge into machine-readable data. Make sure that the machines can interpret the semantics embedded in the data weirdness, process it, and maybe distribute it to the target systems or distribute it to our new digital products, to our AI implementations, so that we can steer the algorithms smartly. What that also means that instead of if then else statements in your code, you could possibly embed the rules of how to handle the data into the data itself and make it available to the machine that will just get instructions from the data regarding what is the next step it needs to take. That also makes your systems more maintainable. So embedded knowledge, not just knowledge in a nice analytical dashboard, but the knowledge that lives where the data lives and morphs when the data morphs. So I didn't cover Databasity because that's effectively the only thing that is a clear signal that data has been mismanaged, and for no failure of architects or people who do data management. Effectively, Databasity just means that we integrate a lot of data, we drag it from A to B to C to the data lake to the data warehouse to some downstream systems, and we completely forget in all that to ask ourselves, so what is the meaning of this data? Sometimes we think it's self-explanatory. For example, a customer name. But if you really look at those names, it's not always clear because is it a name as it sits in the Chamber of Commerce? Is it a kind of a colloquial way in which we refer to that customer? Is it the brand name? It can be either. And unfortunately, when you are in 10th hop of integration, that meaning is very hard to retrieve. So you have a lot of attributes that you spent a lot of money to get out of the source systems and bring to your table, but they are effectively useless because you don't know what they mean, which means using them is correlated with some degree of risk that you are misusing, misinterpreting them. So if you look at how this all results in the failure of a digital innovation? Well, first off, the fact that you standardizing the reality, breaking the data silos, imposing a common enterprise data standard will cater well to some users and absolutely not to the others. So you will have business users that look at the screen and say, this is not my reality. I'm talking about grades all the day. Now I log into your new product and I see products here. So I'm not sure, is product the same as grade? Where shall I find the stuff that I operate on a daily basis? I'm not really sure. Also, relational systems are not that flexible, which means that when you undertake that standardization effort, what you will end up doing is a lot of analysis and a lot of design. Whilst doing that, you will leave a lot of attributes behind saying, okay, they are local to your perspective, so we're not taking them on board. And we are doing that to avoid the impact of change. So the flexibility isn't really there, which means that you want to do things first time right, which in turn means that you will spend a lot of time making sure that once you are in production, you are not likely to change anything anytime soon. And without data, your digital implementations are nothing. Automation is not possible unless there is a machine accessible data. AI is not possible unless there is a data to be analyzed, actually. So effectively, not having proper master data or core data will delay your digital transformation or actually crash it if you decide, well, we'll make do with some test data. I promise you, you will discover that the real data is much more complex and your deliverable doesn't know how to deal with that complexity. And of course, discarding this hidden knowledge, the one that was sitting in hashes, slashes, and dashes, and hacks and tricks, the one that was killed by the data quality processing, that will drive your users once again to say, well, this is not my reality. This is not a client. This is just a recipient of my goods, but I see them on the client list. I don't trust this system. And there is a thing. UX is probably the word of the year, and data UX even more so. And data UX means that as a user, I want to experience an application in which I recognize all the terms, I recognize all the values, I recognize how the world is structured. So the only question remaining is this application more natural to use, easier to use, and more pleasant to use than maybe my legacy Excels or my phone interactions? So that is purely UX and change management. But data UX plays a tremendous role in the adoption of digital deliverables. And probably if I have to compare the impact of lack of speed with lack of business commitment, with lack of data UX, I would say data UX is actually what kills the adoption, and lack of adoption is actually what kills the business commitment, and lack of business commitment is what kills the digital initiative. So probably this would be the most important factor, at least in my experience, when we talk about data and what can go wrong with data. But going back to what is wrong with data, in all honesty, nothing. Nothing is wrong with data as such, but there is quite a lot that doesn't quite sit with the reality of today in the paradigm of how we handle and approach the data. So if I had to make a wish for all of those companies that are undergoing digital transformation today, or undergoing automation of their value chains today, or are aiming at having 360-degree overview of their business via advanced analytics and AI. What I would wish for them is have all of those data silos well understood, reflected, linked together with their contextual terminology, their specific way in which they think the different parts of the reality relate to each other, and allow the system and the users to navigate those contexts. Allow every user to log into the product and see on the screen something that talks to their perception of how things are. And that might even mean that the context that you will see on the screen will depend on the department that you are logging in from. And that's fine. That needs to be there and needs to be catered for. What I also would hope is a full flexibility that will allow us to deploy literally 2 sprints to production and evolve from there without impacting the targets, without causing a major technology migration project. I would want to store my digital knowledge, not only the one that's buried in hacks and tricks, but also the regulatory knowledge. So how do the regulations steer the way we use this data? How does legacy system landscape look for this data? What does the conceptual model look for this data? Where does this data come from? Where is it going to? Which of its attributes are confidential or personal identifying? So I want that all in one place, and I want that all accessible from the data. Eventually, I want to be able to write a query that says, give me the products, all the ways different departments refer to the word product, all the descriptors of the products, where in the landscape they come from, where are they going to, which one of them are confidential, and when was every one of those products last updated and by what. And I want the results from that one query, which would also mean that everything there is to know about data is embedded in the data itself. So I don't have data here and then data model on the wall. I don't have data here and data lineage somewhere in the lineage system, and data glossary somewhere in the business glossary system, and maybe data catalog somewhere in the data cataloging software. Why do I want that? Because the first thing that's going to happen when you are not on time, on budget, is you will put your maintenance of artifacts into the backlog, and it might never make it out of that backlog. So it will be a technical debt that might never get solved, which means that it's good to have all those artifacts for impact analysis purposes. But you know, I know, we don't just blindly trust them. We at least ask ourselves, are they really, really the latest ones? So I want to prevent that, and I want those artifacts to build themselves based on the data and maintain themselves when the data is maintained. And of course, I wouldn't be just going around making wishes out of the blue. As data singularity, this is exactly what we've solved. So there is a solution to this problem. Now, I'm not here to make a sales pitch at all. So if you want to know how we solved that and how we acknowledged the qualities of the data and made the best use of them instead of turning them into something that's wrong about the data, please reach out to me, set up a meeting. We can talk through the reference use cases as well as technology or the paradigm behind it. In the meantime, of course, let me make another wish. It will not go without the Christmas owl that also would like to use client-sound technology stack and basically incur no license costs. So talking about free and open source software, that is how we made that wish come true. But again, this meeting for me was more to give a different perspective on something that is very commonly perceived as something that's wrong with data. And that is the end of my presentation. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go back into the system and look at the questions. Right. So there are no questions right now, which, right. Yes. I see Filippo has a comment on the barrel size, exactly. And actually one of the cases that we were discussing, we had a company that spent quite a significant amount of years to figure out what is an FTE, so full-time equivalent. That can really depend, and that's exactly the contextuality that we need to be able to capture, and that will be gone if you are trying to impose a common definition for the barrel, for example. All right, so if there are no more questions, then I believe Laura will share my contact details. Please do not hesitate to reach out just for a chat. If you're interested in this topic, you know how to find me. And in the meantime, Thank you for your attention and have a fantastic day. Yeah, Laura, back to you.
Thanks very much, Andreas. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. As mentioned previously, I've popped all of the info in the chat. It will also come through on an email alongside a recording of the event, and this will go up onto YouTube as well. If you do have any questions, Andreas has made that very clear, you can get in touch. You can also get in touch with myself. And if you do have any desire to actually be part of the AI series yourself, then please do get in contact with me. But thank you very much, everyone, for joining. It's been great, and I hope to see you again in a future AI series event. So thank you very much, Andreas, and everyone take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.